Dear participant, hello and welcome to the 12th English Fast Track Seminar. I'm Mortaza Charkobi, Assistant Professor at HSE University Institute of Education, Moscow, Russia. Today we have a new seminar, a new speaker, and a new topic. Let me briefly introduce you our today's speaker, who is Ralina Fatykhova, a master student of Applied Social Psychology program at HSE University. And the topic of today is job education mismatch, individual and organizational outcome in public sector. Thank you, Ralina, for accepting our invitation, and we are very glad to have you today as an invited speaker. Just you may say a few words about yourself, your research interests, and perhaps your educational level. And then after you can start your presentation. So microphone is yours and you can begin now.
Thank you. Hello, can you hear me? All good?
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you,
Yes.
please.
Thank you for having me here today. It's a big opportunity for myself to present my research, and also to find out what you also think about it. And in terms of my interests in research, it's definitely work, organizational psychology, and basically it stems from my probably bachelor in psychology that I did in the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. And there I studied work and organizational psychology. And yeah, I really grew a lot of curiosity towards understanding our professions better. And yes, now, as Morteza also mentioned, I study at the University Higher School of Economics. And yeah, this is my master's degree for applied social psychology. And yeah, today I'm here to present my topic of master thesis.
Yeah, thank you for the brief introduction. So now you can share your screen and begin your presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. Can you see it?
Yeah, we can. So you just zoom it, please. Okay, great.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, please start. Yeah.
yeah, basically, my topic is on the relationship between the job education mismatch and individual and organizational outcomes in the public sector. Now, why is this important to study? Because across the world, each year, more students than ever are obtaining their university degrees. So we have a big rise of employees circulating in the labor workforce. However, many of them are struggling because they have a degree in one field, for example, in biology, and they end up working in a completely different field, like in marketing or science. And basically, this has become a norm when people don't work according to their education. And this is what we call the job education mismatch. So, the mismatch may occur subjectively, and this means in the perception of the employee themselves, or objectively. So, even by rational criteria, the person is not supposed to be working in marketing. And why is this important? Because all of us here will work someday or already are working. Therefore, yeah, we may also face this issue. And in fact, statistics show that around 33% of Russian graduates work in non graduate jobs, which amounts to 25% in the Netherlands. And actually, the highest rates of the mismatch are found among public sector employees, so especially the governmental sector. This is why it was so important and interesting to research, especially the governmental public sector. Now, the problem statement is basically that according to the existing literature that we have today, the job education mismatch is not only a growing societal problem for individuals, because it also, in fact, affects the workspace to a large extent. And basically, as you may also imagine, when a person is mismatched with their education and they work completely in a different field, this may have negative consequences on job performance because they don't have the necessary abilities to perform their tasks. It negatively affects job motivation and, in turn, mental and physical health. So, the problem lies in the fact that the large focus of research is on the reasons why the mismatch is met so common. However, it's lacking the reason on the consequences. And that is essentially the problem here, because the mismatch is met so common. I mean, I think you can all already think of a friend who you know is mismatched or a family member. And little is still known of how detrimental its effects are on the employees and on organizations, specifically in Russia and the Netherlands. Therefore, the aim of my research is to investigate the relationship between the job education mismatch and individual outcomes being reported mental and physical health and organizational outcomes. And these are job satisfaction, job performance, job motivation, job burnout among employees in the public sector. So the research question is, what is the relationship between the job education mismatch and organizational and individual outcomes? And now the novelty of my study consists in the fact that previously there hasn't been an investigation on the job education mismatch in individual and organizational outcomes, so separately. Further, the novelty will consist of developing and validating a subjective and objective matching criterion to categorize whether a person does have a job education mismatch or does not. And further, it's in researching the mismatch among employees working in the public sector, for example, teachers, politics, in Russia and the Netherlands. And this is also something that has not been researched previously. In terms of theoretical significance, this research will enhance our understanding of how the mismatch affects individual and organizational outcomes. So specifically see, is there a difference? Further, it will enrich the scientific field of organizational psychology and contribute to the job fit theory, which I base my study on. In terms of methodological significance now, we will develop an instrument to classify the mismatch, so a subjective scale and objective measurements. And we will also enrich the pool of instruments that may be used in organizational and health psychology in Russia and Netherlands, also by validating some of the scales that previously have not been validated in these countries. And lastly, the results of the study may be very useful to state policymakers, human resource development professionals who are seeking to enhance our career opportunities, even school counselors, and various stakeholders simply seeking to help graduates make well-informed career decisions. And yes, now in terms of the theoretical analysis, as I mentioned previously, just to bring in some more clarity, we define the job education mismatch as a situation where an employee's qualifications, so their bachelor degree, master's degree, PhD, anything that they have done, whether they don't match with the qualification requirements for the job that they're currently working in. And again, we have the subjective approach, and that is based on self-report measures. And this is important because obviously no one but the employee can say whether this job matches them or it does not. So this is based on their own analysis of their situation. And then the second approach is the objective one. And here we determine if an employee's educational requirements match their job based on experts analyzing occupational codes. So we use networks like ONET to classify the mismatch. And then we statistically analyze whether there is a match or there isn't. Now, this is probably the most interesting part. How do we understand the job fit? So essentially, the consequences of the job education mismatch have largely been investigated through the job fit theory. And this is a sub-concept of this larger person environment fit theory. And according to which higher employees' fitness to their job characteristics results in higher performance. So the more fit they are, the better they perform. And as such, this theory emphasized the need supplies fit and the demand supplies fit. So here we can also see the figure 1. Essentially shows how when the objective environment with our demands and supplies has a fit with the person, so their abilities and needs, they may have larger coping resources, better defense mechanisms. And if that does not occur, then it may lead to strains and illness. And in fact, this diagram may explain this better. So when we have a need supplies fit, so for example, a person needs for autonomy or needs for safety are met with the job tasks that they perform, their level of strain substantially decreases. Similar happens when the person's demands are greater than their abilities. So this means that when a person is able to perform, so they're demanded not greater than they're able to perform, they can excel. Whereas if a person is demanded much more than abilities allow them to, this person will have very high job strain. Yes, based on this theory and the analysis above, we came to the following hypothesis. So the first larger one is that the job education mismatch is negatively related to individual outcomes. So here I mean the physical health among public sector employees and then the mental health. And the second large hypothesis states that the job education mismatch is negatively related to organizational outcomes. And these are job satisfaction, job performance, job motivation, and job burnout. So essentially, it's important to state which constructs we use. Next, also you may question, why do we compare Russia and the Netherlands? So why do I find it important that we have these two countries? And essentially, they actually have very interesting differences in their historic educational aspects. So in Russia, after the 90s economic recession, there was a huge expansion into higher education that was met with very lenient entry requirements. So people could easily be accepted to any university degree that they wanted to. And so the university education would be seen as a diploma factory. People would study a couple of years, they'd get a diploma, and then based on it, you have a very good job. This is an example of a very detailed educational system. And on the other hand, we have the Netherlands. And only now, over the recent decades, the Netherlands has experienced a rising supply of higher education graduates. And here, there's also a increasing amount of public investments made into higher education. So all of this leads to an oversupply of employees in the labor market. They're unable to upskill themselves. They're unable to find the jobs because it's just a huge labor market. So this is why we may expect some interesting differences between these two countries, where since both of them report a supply-demand imbalance, there may be differences in how they perceive the job education mismatch. So my second research question is to investigate the difference in Russia and in the Netherlands. Now, participants for my research study, it will include around 400 participants in total from the Russian Netherlands. And this was calculated based on Tabachnik and Fidel's requirements when we want to conduct structural equation modeling that will essentially help to show all the constructs together and what are the correlations for each country. And it's important that CFI is being close to 0.95 and RMCA is 0.08. Therefore, we need at least 200 participants. And my inclusion criteria is employees working in the public sector, those who are national to Russia and the Netherlands, target age around 23 to 85 years old, and those who have a bachelor diploma, and at least 2 years of a job experience to actually be able to say something about their mismatch or match. And we will use convenience and snowball sampling to attract participants in both countries. So we will use just simply approaching people and social networks like Instagram, Telegram, and Facebook. Now with the design, it will be a cross-correlational design since we're contributing to the research between two different countries, and this is largely used. We will control for age and gender, and our independent variables are the mismatch, objective and subjective, and the dependent variables are then the individual outcomes and organizational outcomes, so around 6 dependent variables. Now the procedure. First, we will receive the ethical approval from the HSE Ethics Committee, and this is important, especially later on if you want to publish in journals, then most of them require an ethical approval. All materials will be translated, back translated, and this is already in process as I'm already collecting data. Further questionnaires will be distributed All subjects are very importantly informed about their anonymity, confidentiality, the purpose of the study, and contacts of the project researchers so that they're always able to approach and ask if they have any concerns or questions. Further, participants are required to sign this form of consent before they proceed and before any data is collected from them. And yeah, because sensitization and ambiguous temporal procedure is not an issue here, questions will be displayed in a fixed order. Now, basically, also another interesting part of the presentation is what are the measures? And here, the biggest amount of work has been actually invested. So we include already social demographical variables. So this is just age, gender, nationality, diplomas obtained, and yeah, obviously about their job. A job education mismatch, there is the subjective mismatch, and then the objective mismatch we're also validating. So basically, these two scales we're constructing. And yeah, I had the most problems maybe here because it's quite a challenge when you don't have a scale that's already validated. But it's a great opportunity to develop yourself further, especially in research. Next is the individual outcomes. So this is the reported mental and physical health, and I will use the SF12 that has already been validated. So that's very nice for me. To measure the organizational outcomes, there's a job satisfaction scale. I have already validated it as part of my research internship, and then they also have good reliabilities. Job motivation scale, then that's quite a large one. There will be 19 questions, and gladly it's already also validated. And lastly, job performance. This will be the individual work performance questionnaire. Some of you may already know it. And the job burnout scale. So this actually has been validated in Russia quite recently. So also earning good reliability coefficients. And finally, the statistical procedures. All the data collected will be analyzed in SPSS and AMOS to create the models. Any reverse coded items will be recoded. And then data will also be screened for missing values. It will be checked for normality and any univariate and multivariate outliers to make sure that the data is ready for the analysis. And convex alpha will also be calculated for all the scales to understand what we're dealing with. And then a model will be constructed in SPSS with structural collision modeling. And I think this is the best way to show how all the variables and constructs are related to each other. And also multi-group analysis will be used to show the relationships. And that is it for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralina, for this interesting presentation. I think I found it a very unique study because one of the advantages of your study is that there are not much study conducted on this topic. And there actually, we have a few study according to my search, but they haven't gone to that detail that your study is going actually. So this is considered as one of the advantage benefit of your study. And one of the challenges I think you have ahead is to deal with, for example, SK development for job education mismatch, which is one of the great issues. And then for the first time, for example, you can develop this scale and present it, I don't know, to the scientific society. So thank you once again. Now I think we have to begin the next section, which is question and answer. So there are a few ways that actually you can ask your question. The first way is just turn on your camera and ask your question directly from Ralina. The second way is just to use the chat, Zoom chat, and then type your question there, and Ralina, or I will read for Ralina. And the third way is just pass it to me and I will ask Ralina on your behalf. So now you can start if you have any question. So Ralina, could you back the first slide, please? Thank you.
To the first one.
Mm-hmm.
here.
So yeah, I think maybe participants are a bit thinking about the aspect of your study because it has a lot of novelties here. So I ask you a question actually. So it's not a maybe question, maybe a comment, or less I'm trying to inspire you with my opinions. So when we talk, Ralina, about job education mismatch, so we are talking about kind of perception of mismatch, or let's say concern. This is another thing that you have to, is a concern, is a kind of feeling, or is kind of perception. So, well, I mean, I don't know about that. So maybe you a little bit search to clarify between these two construct, which is a feeling or a perception. And the second issue about job education mismatch is that it could be both-sided. It means that the mismatch can come from job to education, or can come from the job education to job. And I'm wondering, do you know, or did you find a way, a solution in order to measure the direction of mismatch, whether it is from job to the education or is from education to job? So what do you think about this?
Thank you for the question. And it's definitely an interesting one, also philosophical one. What is the direction? Um, as far as my literature view has went, one way to measure this, whether it's the education or it's a job, is simply by asking the participants. It's quite subjective. However, I think they may also see where, to a certain extent, their issue came from, whether they just simply took the wrong job uh, when they were on the labor market, or when they were pursuing their degree. Is this what they really wanted? So I see this as the person first chose the wrong education or the right education, and second stage is whether they chose the right job. And most of the literature actually says that people most often don't choose the right job. So there is the work asymmetry theory that says that people don't understand what are the job requirements. So they see this popular like manager or review specialist, but they don't understand what characteristics are required. So they don't really analyze what do they know, what did their education give them, and whether this is something that they can actually pursue. So I see it more
Right,
towards the
thank
job.
you. No, I understood you. I mean, your answer. So it could be both-sided, but again, so we need to quantify it. We need to make it visible. So if you think that adding a question, for example, you can add a question, do you like your education more than your job? If person says, yes, I like my education in university that started before getting the job, so then you can understand the direction is from the education to job. I mean, the
Yeah.
mismatch. So this is something that we need to check it, because again, this is based on the perception and we have no idea. Maybe different people, they have different opinion, or maybe they weight more education, some may or
Mhm.
more job. I have seen actually both type of people. I have seen people that are happy with their job, but they were not actually happy with their education. But they said, no, I feel that my job matched my skills, my interest, but actually what I studied, it was waste of time. So you can see this kind of people in society. If we can see both people, then it's better again to quantify, to make it visible in order to avoid further confusion. Colleagues, I think there are actually some comments. So here, what would your prediction regard? Okay, so one of the questions is from our colleague Maddox Farshi. I'm reading it for you, Ralina. He's asking, you are now in the step of data collection from Netherlands and Russia. So what would be your prediction regarding differences between Russia and Netherlands in terms of, for example, let's say, job education mismatch? Do you have an expectation?
Certainly, I think every researcher does have a little hunch about what's going to happen. And I actually think that in Russia, we will notice very interesting differences, specifically because of the educational background and how education since the 90s has a process there. And this is because the education before was very broad. So we have economists, we have marketologists, I don't know, engineers. Whereas in the Netherlands, maybe around already 10, 15 years, the education system is very detailed as well. I mean, there we have urban geography. We don't have it in Russia. In the Netherlands, we have abnormal psychology, or something very specific, and we don't have that in Russia yet. So the jobs in Russia may already be specific, but people aren't educated enough to be in these specific jobs, so they tend to travel abroad. Therefore,
Right.
I
Yeah, I
yeah.
understood. Yeah, thank you for this answer. We have another question from our colleague from Finland. He's asking, thank you, Ralina, for your presentation. And then he's asking, could you please let us know a little bit about model specification? Is the model specification that you provided in, I think it was a statistical analysis. I don't know exactly, I don't remember the slide number. He's asking about this model specification is based on a theoretical investigation or conceptual model. How
Yeah.
did you reach to that? And do you have a conceptual model to guide you in managing the variable as a predictor and outcomes as you demonstrated in your model or not?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Certainly, the conceptual framework is based on the job fit theory, which is
Mhm.
a subconcept of the person environment fit theory. And there you can even intuitively suggest that um, we have the environment. So if it does not really match a person, that will lead to negative outcome strains. And as part of the model, actually, they used coping resources, they use job strain, and literature has also focused on replacing job strain. So
Mhm.
looking in mental health, physical health. So job strain isn't only stress on the work, but it's also affecting your blood pressure even. And that's also important to investigate because that leads to further consequences.
Okay, so this
Um,
is based on theoretical and conceptual models. That was
yeah.
something Dr. Habib wanted to ask you. So thank you for this answer. And maybe the last question I was asked by Yulia, our colleague, says thank you for the presentation. Did you include your target group people with a special education need or not? I mean, do
Um,
you include people with a special education also need or not? A special education, Yulia, could you just, because there are a lot of category of a special people with a special education, could you a little bit write more maybe? I mean,
Yeah,
I
of
guess
course.
Yulia is
Can
ref yeah,
can you
please.
hear me? I mean here, people with disabilities, for
Uh-huh.
example, or people with some behavior problems, or people who have not good social economical situation, or some educational specificities due to this they are untypical from the typical people. So
yeah.
what about this category? And thank you for your
Mhm.
presentation.
Thank you, Yulia, for the question. So Ralina, I think as I mentioned before, she's referring to those special category of people that they
Yeah.
have special needs actually. So, and they are not able probably to use what they want in university, for example. So they have some certain group of education to choose. So they cannot choose whatever maybe they want. I mean, based on physical shortages that they have. Any answer for that?
Thank you, Yulia. That's a good question. In fact, my research does not have an exclusion criteria for that. But what's interesting here is that because we're researching education and their job, there isn't really this discrimination where we're focusing on it. Because if a person is educated to become a teacher, any type of teacher, then it's really irrelevant of their background or anything like that. If they didn't receive the necessary education, but they got the job, then that's also interesting to research. But there isn't any way we're gonna not include those people. That's also a very interesting target population.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for the answer you provided. I think there is no more question, or if even there is more question, but unfortunately our time is over. So I think this is the time to close this seminar. So thank you everybody for attending this seminar and providing Ralina with constructive feedback and suggestion. And also on behalf of the Institute of Education at HSE University, I would like to say thank you, Ralina, once again for accepting our invitation and having this great presentation for our EFTS seminar. Hope to see you all in upcoming seminar that we will have. Wish you a great day and say you goodbye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.